In 1949, a Czech radio engineer named Karel Drbal walked into the patent office in Prague and filed an application that would take 10 years to approve. Not because it was complicated, because it was impossible. His invention was a small cardboard pyramid built to the exact proportions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Inside it, he placed a dull razor blade, and he claimed with documentation that the blade became sharp again, without grinding, without chemicals, without any external energy source, just the shape of the container. The patent office refused to process it. They sent it back. They demanded proof. For 10 years, Drbal fought. He conducted experiments. He gathered measurements. He refined his explanation. He argued that the pyramid shape functions as a kind of antenna, concentrating cosmic radiation in a way that drives moisture out of the crystalline structure of the steel at a microscopic level, allowing the metal's lattice to realign and restore the edge. The patent examiners were not convinced by the theory, but they could not deny the results. Finally, the chief examiner, Engineer Vression, did something unusual. He built a model himself. He tested it in his own office. The razor blade maintained its edge. Drbal's documentation showed that using his pyramid, 16 razor blades completed 1,778 shaves, an average of 111 shaves per blade. Without the pyramid, the same blades lasted roughly 5 shaves each. The lowest count with the pyramid was 51. The highest was 200. On August 15, 1959, Czechoslovak Patent No. 91304 was granted. A factory in Prague began manufacturing miniature cardboard pyramids for commercial sale. In 1968, American authors Sheila Ostrander and Lynn Schroeder visited Czechoslovakia, met Drbal, and dedicated an entire chapter of their best-selling book, Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, to pyramid power. The concept exploded in the West, but the scientific establishment dismissed it as pseudoscience. The factory kept selling pyramids, the academics kept ignoring the patent, and the question of how a shape, with no moving parts and no energy source, could physically alter the structure of steel remained unanswered by mainstream science for the next 60 years. The patent reads, "The method of maintaining razor blades and straight razor blades sharp by placing them in the magnetic field in such a way that the sharp edge lies in the direction of the magnetic lines." That's what the paperwork said. But what Drbal actually discovered was something far more dangerous. He discovered that geometry itself can concentrate and redirect energy. The shape of a space changes what happens inside that space. A pyramid, built to specific proportions, creates a measurable electromagnetic environment that affects the physical structure of matter placed within it. If a shape can sharpen steel without touching it, what can it do to a seed, to a root, to the soil around a growing plant? That question has been answered, and the answer is the reason you've never been taught any of this. Let's go back to the beginning. Because the pyramid discovery didn't start with Drbal, it started with a dead cat in Egypt. In the early 20th century, a French ironmonger and amateur scientist named Antoine Bovis visited the Great Pyramid of Giza. While inside the king's chamber, roughly 1/3 of the way up the pyramid's total height, he noticed something odd. Dead animals, cats, rats, and small creatures that had wandered into the pyramid and died had not decomposed. They had mummified, dried out completely without rotting. The garbage in the chamber did not smell the way refuse normally smells. Something was preserving organic matter inside this space. This made no sense. The interior of the pyramid is humid. The Egyptian climate outside is hot and dry, which can cause mummification in the open desert. But inside the pyramid, where the air is moist and stagnant, organic material should rot, not desiccate. The conditions were wrong for natural preservation, yet preservation was occurring. Bovis returned to France and built a scale model of the Great Pyramid, carefully maintaining the same proportions, base to height ratio matching the original, base edges aligned north-south and east-west. He placed organic material inside at 1/3 the total height, the position corresponding to the king's chamber in the real pyramid. Meat, fruit, eggs, and other perishable items did not rot. They dried out and were preserved, exactly as he had observed in Egypt. He published his findings. The scientific establishment dismissed them completely, but the results were repeatable. Anyone who built a properly proportioned model and oriented it correctly observed the same effect. And that reproducibility attracted exactly the kind of mind that would take the discovery further. Enter Karel Drbal. Working at the Radio Institute of Research in Prague, where radar and microwave antenna technology had been developed during World War II, Drbal understood something that the French scientists who dismissed Bovis did not. Many microwave antennas are pyramidal in shape. There is a well-established relationship in electrical engineering between geometry and electromagnetic behavior. A parabolic dish focuses radio waves. A horn antenna directs microwave energy. A pyramidal waveguide channels radiation. Drbal suspected there was a direct connection between the pyramid's geometry and the behavior of electromagnetic energy within its interior space. If the shape could preserve meat, could it also affect the crystalline structure of metal? He placed a dull razor blade inside his model, and the answer changed everything. Now let's bring this into the garden. In 2001, a study published in the Russian journal Biophysics and indexed on PubMed, the United States National Library of Medicine database, investigated what they called the pyramid effect. The researcher, A. Narimanov of the Institute of Theoretical and Experimental Biophysics at the Russian Academy of Sciences, built a model pyramid of Egyptian proportions and tested its effects on plants, aqueous solutions, and solid objects. The results were remarkable and deserve careful attention because this is not anecdotal gardening lore. This is controlled laboratory science published by a credentialed researcher at one of the most prestigious scientific institutions in Russia. Dry barley seeds that were held inside the pyramid before sowing showed stimulated growth compared to control seeds stored outside the pyramid in identical conditions. The seeds were not treated with anything. They were not exposed to any chemical, any radiation source, any device. They were simply placed inside a geometric shape for a period of time and then planted. And they grew better. But the study went further. The pH of water stored inside the pyramid changed measurably from the norm. This means the pyramid shape altered the chemical properties of plain water without adding anything to it. A threefold increase, 300%, in the rate of decomposition of hydrogen peroxide was observed when an aqueous solution was stored inside the pyramid. Hydrogen peroxide decomposition is a well-understood chemical reaction. A threefold acceleration of that reaction inside a geometric structure with no catalyst, no heat source, and no external energy is not a subtle finding. It is a dramatic one. And perhaps most striking of all, the masses of both biological objects, the seeds and inorganic solids, specifically quartz crystals, changed while inside the intrapyramidal space. The physical weight of matter changed inside a geometric shape. This finding alone should have triggered a global research program. Instead, the study was published, indexed, and quietly ignored. A separate study on fenugreek seeds found that pyramidal structures exhibited a positive influence on radical emergence and seedling vigor in terms of both germination percentage and length, compared to control samples kept in the open air. Copper pyramids showed more influence on mean radical length and fresh weight than pyramids made of other materials. Larger pyramids produced stronger effects than smaller ones. The pattern was consistent. Copper geometry concentrated something that biology responds to. The question is not whether geometry affects biology. The science says it does. The question is why nobody in mainstream agriculture is talking about it. And the answer, as always, is money. Now let's connect the pyramid to the copper ring. Because the pyramid is not the only shape that concentrates atmospheric energy. And the man who proved this was nearly erased from history. In December of 1924, Georges Lakhovsky, a Russian-born engineer living in Paris, deliberately infected a row of geranium plants with Agrobacterium tumefaciens, a bacterium that causes plant tumors. Then he placed a single ring of bare copper wire, about 30 centimeters in diameter, with the ends left open around one of the infected plants. The ring was not connected to anything. No battery, no generator, no power source of any kind. Within 2 weeks, every infected plant without the ring was dead. The plant inside the copper ring not only survived, it healed. The tumors receded. It grew taller. It flowered. It showed prolonged vegetative and floral activity until the first frost. Lakhovsky presented these results to the French Academy of Sciences on April 2, 1928, sponsored by the legendary Professor D'Arsonval. Researchers at the National School of Agriculture in Montpellier confirmed the results independently. Copper rings activated potato production, stimulated the productivity of carrots and grapevines, and promoted the germination of all seeds tested. Dr. Carlo Maxia at the University of Cagliari in Italy documented accelerated growth of aquatic plants under the influence of a copper circuit. Here is the science. A ring of copper wire with open ends forms what electrical engineers call an oscillating circuit. It has a natural resonant frequency determined by its diameter, calculated by the formula wavelength equals 2 pi times the diameter. Lakhovsky's 30-centimeter ring resonated at a wavelength of approximately 2 meters. But the ring does not need external power to oscillate. It is passive. It is an antenna. Between the ionosphere and the surface of the Earth, there exists a constant voltage gradient. On a clear day, this gradient is roughly 100 to 300 volts per meter. During thunderstorms, it can spike to 10,000 volts per meter or more. This atmospheric electrical field is always present. It never turns off. Every tree, every blade of grass, every plant in your garden exists within this invisible ocean of electromagnetic energy. We know this energy exists because we measure it. Weather stations track it. Atmospheric physicists study it. The Schumann resonances, the fundamental electromagnetic frequencies of the Earth ionosphere cavity, have been measured continuously since the 1950s. The planet itself vibrates at approximately 7.83 Hz, with harmonics at 14 Hz, 20 Hz, 26 Hz, and 33 Hz. Every living organism on Earth evolved within this electromagnetic environment. It is not exotic. It is not mysterious. It is the baseline. What Lakhovsky discovered was that a simple copper ring, properly sized and oriented, could capture a small portion of this ever-present energy and deliver it to a plant in a form that the plant's cells could use. The copper ring captures atmospheric energy and re-radiates it at its resonant frequency. The plant inside the ring receives this frequency. Its cells, which Lakhovsky demonstrated, are themselves electromagnetic resonators, respond. The natural oscillation of healthy cells is reinforced. The oscillation of diseased cells is overwhelmed. The plant's own biology does the healing. This was not a theory waiting for proof. The proof came first. The plants healed, the yields increased, the germination accelerated. The theory came afterward to explain what was already happening in the field. Lakhovsky published his theory in The Secret of Life in 1925. The journal Nature reviewed it. His core thesis was that every living cell is an electromagnetic resonator, capable of emitting and absorbing radiation at very high frequencies. Health is oscillatory equilibrium. Disease is oscillatory disequilibrium. Restore the correct frequencies, and health returns. By 1930, he had developed the multiple wave oscillator, built with assistance from Nikola Tesla's radio frequency expertise. He patented the multiple wave oscillator in France in 1931 and in the United States shortly after. It was used in Paris hospitals throughout the 1920s and 30s. The first International Congress of Radiobiology, held in Venice in 1934, was a direct consequence of his work. Then Lakhovsky, a prominent anti-Nazi, fled to New York in 1941. He died in 1942 under disputed circumstances. His machines were removed from hospitals. His research was never continued by any major institution, and his name was erased from biological and agricultural textbooks. But here's the thread that ties Drbal's pyramid, Bovis's preservation effect, and Lakhovsky's copper ring together. They are all geometry acting as an antenna. The pyramid concentrates and redirects electromagnetic energy within its internal space. The copper ring captures atmospheric energy and re-radiates it at a specific frequency. Both use shape and material to interact with the invisible electromagnetic environment that surrounds all living things at all times, and both have been documented. Drbal's patent is on file. Lakhovsky's results are in the French Academy of Sciences archives. The PubMed barley study is indexed and accessible to anyone with an internet connection. The fenugreek pyramid germination study is published. The evidence exists. It just isn't taught. Now let's go deeper into the electroculture history. Because the copper ring and the copper pyramid are just two expressions of a much larger discovery that the 20th century tried very hard to bury. In 1841, a Scottish inventor named Alexander Bain buried plates of zinc and copper in the ground about a meter apart. The moist earth acted as an electrolyte. The zinc oxidized, electrons flowed. He generated roughly 1 volt, and the plants growing between the plates grew faster, larger, and yielded more. In the 1890s, the Finnish scientist Selim Lemström ran systematic field trials on electrical stimulation of crops. He measured yield increases of 40 to 70%. His work was published in Electricity in Agriculture and Horticulture in 1904. In 1918, the British government formed the Electroculture Committee, staffed by Nobel laureates and leading agricultural scientists. For 18 years, they collected field data documenting substantial yield gains from electrical methods. Overhead wire networks captured atmospheric electricity and delivered it to crops below. The results were positive, measurable, repeatable. And then, in 1936, the committee was dissolved. The reports were sealed in government archives. The official statement said there was little advantage to continue the work. Not that it didn't work, that they would stop studying it. Justin Christofleau, the French inventor who filed the first electroculture patent in 1920, documented yield increases of up to 200% using atmospheric antennas made from copper and zinc mounted on wooden poles up to 20 feet tall. His devices were adopted by farmers in France, Australia, Africa, and China. His system worked so well that it eliminated the need for chemical fertilizers entirely. And then he was dragged into court by representatives of the fertilizer industry. Not because his claims were false, because they threatened commerce. The USDA published Bulletin 1379 in 1926. The British Committee was dissolved. Christofleau's momentum was killed, and the Haber-Bosch nitrogen that had been filling bombs during World War I was redirected into bags of synthetic fertilizer. A multi-hundred-billion-dollar industry was born, and every free, unpatentable method of enhancing plant growth through atmospheric electricity was filed away and forgotten, until now. Because in the last few years, a global movement of gardeners, homesteaders, and independent researchers has quietly rediscovered what Lakhovsky, Christofleau, Lemström, and the British Committee documented a century ago. And they are using the same 3 geometric forms that appear throughout the historical record. The first is the Lakhovsky ring. It is a circle of copper wire, roughly 30 centimeters in diameter, with the ends left open and not touching. It is placed around a plant at soil level, oriented with the gap facing north and tilted slightly to align with the Earth's magnetic field. It is, in every sense, the same device that healed Lakhovsky's tumor-infected geraniums in 1924. The ring resonates at a frequency determined by its circumference and interacts with the plant's cellular oscillation. It costs almost nothing to produce and requires no power source. Modern gardeners who have adopted this design report the same pattern of results that Lakhovsky documented: healthier plants, stronger growth, and improved resistance to disease. The second is the spiral antenna, a direct descendant of Christofleau's 1920 patent. It is a length of copper wire wound in a spiral around a wooden stake, with the bottom buried in the soil and the top exposed to the atmosphere. The spiral captures atmospheric electrical energy from above. The buried end grounds that energy into the root zone. A continuous microcurrent flows from the atmosphere to Earth through the copper, passing directly through the soil where plant roots are feeding. Christofleau's original designs used antennas up to 20 feet tall, each covering roughly 225 square feet. He wound the spiral clockwise in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern, following the direction of the Coriolis effect. Modern versions range from 3-foot stakes in raised beds to 10-foot poles in open gardens. The third is the copper pyramid, a frame built from copper pipe or heavy copper wire in the proportions of the Great Pyramid, a base edge to height ratio of approximately 1.57 to 1. The pyramid does not need to be solid. The frame alone creates the geometric electromagnetic environment that Drbal patented and Narimanov documented. Practitioners place these over seed starting trays, over individual plants, or at the center of garden beds, always oriented with the base edges running north-south and east-west, the same alignment that produced results in every documented study. What is remarkable about the modern movement is not any single claim. It is the convergence. Thousands of gardeners on every continent, working independently with no coordination, are reporting the same categories of results, using the same geometric forms that were documented by scientists 100 years ago. Faster germination under copper pyramids, stronger growth inside Lakhovsky rings, increased yields near spiral antennas, reduced pest pressure, less need for irrigation, and all of it achieved with copper wire that costs less than a single bottle of liquid fertilizer. 3 shapes, 3 mechanisms, all capturing energy that is freely available in the atmosphere at all times. A layered system where earth batteries generate galvanic current within the soil. Lakhovsky rings resonate at specific frequencies around individual plants. Spiral antennas channel atmospheric energy into the root zone from above, and copper pyramids concentrate and amplify the electromagnetic field where seeds germinate and seedlings establish. Modern practitioners are seeing results that mirror the historical record with remarkable consistency. Gardeners using copper spiral antennas report tomato plants producing earlier and more abundantly than untreated control plants in the same bed. Blueberry growers using copper-wrapped stakes have documented bushes sending out runners and producing new plants, something they had never seen in years of growing the same variety. Herb gardeners report more intense flavor and aroma. Seed starters using copper pyramids report faster germination and stronger seedling vigor. Are these controlled scientific studies? No. They are field observations from thousands of independent gardeners experimenting simultaneously, without coordination, across different climates, soils, and growing conditions. And they are producing the same pattern of results that Lakhovsky documented in 1924. That Christoffel documented in 1920, that Lemstrom documented in the 1890s, and that the British Electroculture Committee documented for 18 years before their reports were sealed. When thousands of people, separated by a century and an ocean, independently observe the same thing, that is not a trend, that is a signal. Now, let me address the skepticism because it matters. A 2025 peer-reviewed study published in PLOS tested passive copper rods, the simplest version of electroculture, in container gardens under controlled laboratory conditions. The researchers found no statistically significant improvement in yield from copper-wrapped wooden dowels. Their conclusion was that the voltages generated by simple copper rods in small pots are likely too low to affect plant physiology. This is a legitimate finding, and it is important. It tells us that the simplest, smallest implementation of electroculture, a short copper stick in a pot, does not produce enough atmospheric capture to work at detectable levels in a controlled indoor setting. But this does not disprove the principle, it defines the threshold. Lakhovsky's rings were precisely tuned oscillating circuits, not random sticks. Christofleau's antennas were 20 feet tall. The British committee used overhead wire networks spanning entire plots. Lemstrom's systems captured electricity across large outdoor areas exposed to real atmospheric conditions. Scale matters and design matters. Geometry matters and material matters. Orientation matters. The difference between a copper stick in a pot on a lab bench and a properly oriented Lakhovsky ring in an outdoor garden is the difference between holding a wire in the air and building a radio antenna. One does nothing, the other captures a signal. And here's the question that no one in the agricultural establishment will answer. If this is all nonsense, why did governments on 3 continents fund it for decades? Why did the British employ Nobel laureates for 18 years? Why did the French Academy of Sciences publish the results? Why did the Czech Patent Office spend 10 years testing Drbal's pyramid before granting the patent? Why did a PubMed-indexed study from the Russian Academy of Sciences confirm that seeds stored in a pyramid grow faster? And why exactly did all of it stop at the same time? The British Electroculture Committee was dissolved in 1936. Christophe Loewe was taken to court in the 1920s. USDA published its dismissive bulletin in 1926. Lakhovsky fled Europe and died in 1942. And by the late 1940s, the Haber-Bosch synthetic nitrogen industry, born from the same factories that produced explosives in World War I, had become the dominant force in global agriculture. The timing is not a coincidence. The fertilizer industry needed customers. Free atmospheric energy captured by copper geometry does not create customers. It creates independence. And independence is the one thing that a $200 billion a year industry cannot tolerate. The science did not fail. The funding stopped. And the knowledge was filed away in patent offices, sealed government archives, and peer-reviewed journals that nobody in the gardening aisle will ever point you toward. A copper ring costs less than a cup of coffee. A spiral antenna costs less than a bag of mulch. A copper pyramid costs less than a single bottle of liquid fertilizer. And none of them need to be repurchased next season, or ever. The geometry is free. The atmosphere is free. The energy that flows between the sky and the earth is free. And the copper in your hands is the bridge between a $200 billion a year industry that needs you to keep buying, and a science that was documented, patented, published, and then buried because it made that industry obsolete. Shape matters. Copper captures. Plants respond. And the evidence is sitting in sealed government archives, forgotten patent offices, and peer-reviewed journals that nobody in the garden center aisle will ever tell you about. The geometry has always been there. The atmosphere has always been charged. The energy flowing between the sky and the earth has always been free. And copper, one of the oldest metals known to civilization, has always been the bridge. Lakhovsky knew it. Drbal proved it. Christophe Loewe patented it. The British Committee documented it. And a PubMed-indexed study at the Russian Academy of Sciences confirmed it. The only thing that was ever missing was you knowing about it. Now you do. If this changed the way you think about what's happening in the invisible space around your plants, subscribe to Forbidden Harvest and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. We go deep into the knowledge that modern industry walked away from, the techniques that actually work, the science they don't teach you. Drop a comment below. Have you tried any of these methods? Rings, antennas, pyramids? What did you see? The harvest begins now.